This video is a little bit different from my normal content. I want to read through an article written by the CEO and founder of a pretty major print-on-demand company, Fine Art America. He's just talking about kind of the macro perspective on various like print-on-demand businesses. And he kind of talks about where he thinks things are headed in the future. So hopefully you get something out of it. Let's get to it. So the article is written by Sean Brohier, the CEO and founder of Fine Art America. I will link to this in the description in case you want to follow along. All right, and I'm also going to zoom in case you are actually reading along with me on the video. So it's called Inside the Print-on-Demand Industry. Introduction, Bootstrapping versus Venture Capital in the Age of Profits. And he wrote this on October 1st, 2024. Fine Art America is one of the world's largest art marketplaces and print-on-demand technology companies. We've been helping artists and photographers transform their images into museum-quality prints and other products since 2006, and we hold a unique position in the print-on-demand industry as the only major company that has never raised money from investors. By the way, guys, I'm just reading this as a YouTuber. I'm not affiliated with them, so just so you guys know. In fact, we've got a backstory like no other e-commerce company in the world. Our entire business was built by a single programmer back in 2006 and continues to be run by just 8 employees to this very day. By the way, I actually do know another print-on-demand company that was built by a single programmer, so shout out to the single programmers out there. We're profitable, don't have any debt, don't have any investors, don't have any connections to Silicon Valley, and have spent almost 2 decades fending off competition from well-funded Silicon Valley corporations with hundreds of employees and millions in venture capital. We're now one of the largest art sites in the world and power the online sales for millions of independent artists and iconic brands such as Vanity Fair, GQ, Vogue, Sports Illustrated, MLB, Major League Baseball, Time, and many others. Every few years, I like to pull back the curtain and discuss the current state of the print-on-demand industry using inside knowledge from our business plus publicly available information from other companies in the industry. Oftentimes, I'll analyze the business models of various VC companies and then describe what we do as independent business to compete against them. Over the years, I have watched almost every single competitor raise millions of dollars in venture capital, chase top-line growth at all costs, fail to deliver on profitability, and then wind up a shell of its former self. Each time it happens, I would think to myself, why do these companies keep doing this? In more recent years, I stopped asking why they do it, and instead I started asking, when will this end? At what point would investors recognize that the VC business model isn't working for the companies that they invested in? And then what happens to those companies when the investment dollars finally dry up? There are dozens of prominent companies in the print-on-demand industry that are unprofitable and lose millions of dollars every year. Many of them have been losing millions of dollars for more than a decade, but instead of going bankrupt and shutting down, their investors just keep pouring more money into them year after year in order to keep the lights on. How long can that go on for? In 2023, after almost 2 decades of watching the story play out over and over again, I could sense that things were finally changing. Suddenly, all the unprofitable companies in the print-on-demand industry were being sold, or they began issuing press releases about their newfound focus on cost-cutting and profits. Investors were waking up to a world with rising interest rates, a slowing economy, and no more government stimulus checks, and they were growing tired of throwing endless money at their unprofitable investments. In rapid succession, Walmart sold Art.com for a loss just a few years after buying it. Graham Holdings purchased Society6 and then quickly announced that the purchase was a big mistake. And Redbubble introduced a new set of fees to dramatically cut their artist royalties while simultaneously laying off more than a third of their employees. The end had arrived. The VC business model had run its course in the print-on-demand industry. In early 2024, I remember reading a cover story from Fortune magazine about, quote, the age of unicorpses, not unicorns, unicorpses, end quote. Fortune created the cover intentionally to intentionally contrast it with a previous cover from 2015 about the age of unicorns. You can see both covers below. So one is unicorn, one is the skeleton of a unicorn. The tagline on the 2024 cover tells you almost everything you need to know about the state of venture-backed companies in early 2024. Billion-dollar startups and even VC firms are going bust. The free spending days of venture capital were over, and many high-profile companies that were once worth billions of dollars on paper were now bankrupt or virtually worthless. Some of the investment firms that invested in those companies were going bankrupt as well. As interest rates rose and government stimulus checks dried up, venture capital investors became less enthusiastic about pouring endless money into their unprofitable businesses, and as a result, the businesses needed to figure out how to become profitable quickly. VC companies in the POD industry started pushing for profits, and in order to cut costs, they began reducing their artist royalties. It's that push for profitability and its direct impact on artists that motivated me to write this article, that being the CEO and founder of Fine Art America. Fine Art America is home to millions of artists from all over the world, and if you're reading this article, there's a very good chance that A, you're one of those artists, or B, you're an artist who sells through another POD platform like Printed Mint, Society6, Zazzle, etc. Fine Art America is an independent company with no investors, and we've become profitable since our first month in business way back in 2006. If you sell through any print-on-demand website other than FAA, Fine Art America, it's very likely that the website is run by a VC company which, after many years of being unprofitable, is now scrambling in 2024 to figure out how to turn a profit and stay in business. That scramble for corporate profits could have a long-lasting impact on artist royalties throughout the industry. And if you're an artist who sells through any of the websites mentioned above, you've probably already noticed some changes to your monthly payments. I know I have. Let's see how we got here and take a look at the current state of the print-on-demand industry in 2024. All right, let's move on to part one. Also, I always like to kind of show you guys Redbubble stock any chance I get. I do love the stock market and whatnot. Let's look at Redbubble. So it peaked in 2021 January at $5.46 a share, currently at 26 cents a share. Not doing too hot. All right, part one, venture capital hot potato. In 2019, I heard that Society6.com was up for sale. At the time, the website was owned by a company called Leaf Group, and Leaf Group was publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol LEAF. Since Leaf Group was a public company, they're required by law to disclose all of their financial records every 3 months in various reports. For example, if you want to see how Society6 was doing back in 2019, you can read through the Leaf Group's 10K report from that year. There it is. As a quick aside, one of the biggest downsides to being a public company, in my opinion, is you have to disclose your financials to the entire world every 3 months. That's necessary in order to help the public, the general public, make educated decisions about investing in your company, but holy cow, what a nightmare. Every 3 months, you have to disclose to the world and all your competitors everything that you're doing as a company. Per the 10K report above, Leaf Group had sales of $154 million in 2019, but they lost $27 million that year. In fact, they had been racking up huge losses for many years. In 2017, they lost $31 million. In 2018, they lost $23 million. In 2019, they lost $27 million. I had to check if the Leaf Group was still publicly traded. It looks like they got bought out for $323 million by Graham Holdings, okay? And Graham Holdings, let's see how they're doing. They are doing extremely well with the market cap of $3.6 billion. I don't want to sidetrack too much from the article, but like, man, it's been almost 5 years straight of me really deep diving and trying to become as well versed in like how the financial world works, also how the real world works. Like, I don't know, I'm trying not to comment too much, but I think that like if you want to play the game correctly, you do what Leaf Group did. That's just my personal opinion. Anyways, let's keep reading. In 2019, Leaf Group was in trouble. They had $18 million in the bank, but due to their ongoing losses, they were going to run out of money within 12 months. In order to keep the lights on, they had two main options. One, they could try to raise additional money from investors. Two, they could try to sell off one of their businesses to raise money. Leaf Group pursued both options simultaneously. They tried to raise money from investors, and they started reaching out to prospective buyers to see if anyone was interested in buying all or part of their business. How much would you pay for a business that loses millions of dollars per year? For most people, the answer is zero. VCs, however, think differently than most people. To a venture capitalist, it doesn't matter if a business is profitable. All that matters is whether or not the VC can eventually sell the business for more than he paid for it. A VC investor will typically buy a business with the intention of owning it for 3 to 5 years and then selling it to a new investor for 5 times the original price. During those 3 to 5 years, the investor will pour a bunch of money into the business in order to grow its sales. The investor will push the CEO to spend more money on advertising, hire additional employees, develop new products, expand into new territories, etc. It's all designed to dramatically increase sales, and believe it or not, the investor isn't too concerned about profits. The investor is interested in sales and storytelling. If sales are growing, then the investor can tell a story like this, quote, "Look at this business. We managed to grow sales by 200% during the past 5 years, and we're projecting that sales will continue to grow by 100% per year for the next 10 years. If you buy this business right now and do the work to cut costs, it's going to be insanely profitable in just a few years," end quote. That's the story, and it works well at convincing the next VC investor to buy the business as long as the business keeps growing. Investor A buys the business for 10 mil. grows it for 3 to 5 years, and then sells it to investor B for 25 million. Investor B then does the same thing and sells it to investor C for 50 million. It's a game of hot potato. In the kids' version of hot potato, you stand in the circle with a group of friends and toss a potato while music plays. When the music stops, the person holding the potato loses. In the VC version of hot potato, you stand in a circle with a group of investors and toss around an unprofitable business while time passes by. If you own the business at the moment when sales slow down and people realize that the profits are important, you lose. Each investor is able to make money as long as he or she can toss a potato before sales stop growing. Once sales flatline or start to decline, the story falls apart, and if you're the investor left holding the potato when the story falls apart, you're in trouble. In 2019, the story had fallen apart for Society 6, sales had flatlined, and the business was losing millions per year. Leaf Group tried to toss the Society 6 potato, but without a compelling story to tell, they immediately ran into trouble. At that time in 2019, I had already been running Fine Art America for 13 plus years, and throughout all those years, I had been competing against dozens of companies just like Society 6. I knew that most, if not all of them, were unprofitable, and each time they would come close to running out of money, their investors would swoop in and throw them a lifeline. The investors would either invest more money to keep the business afloat, or they would spin a great story and then sell the business to a new set of investors. Either way, the new injection of money would keep the struggling POD business alive for another 3 to 5 years. I kept thinking to myself, when will profits ever matter to these companies or investors? As I watched what unfolded with Society 6 starting in 2019 and continuing into 2020, I could see that the VC era of print-on-demand industry was finally coming to an end. For the first time, no investors arrived to save Society 6. Leaf Group contacted 48 different companies and potential investors about buying various parts of their business, and they only received one bid for Society 6, which they deemed wholly inadequate. This is all public record, and you can read about it. Quote, Leaf Group and its advisors contacted over 48 companies, discussed financing options, and engaged in negotiations with parties concerning potential asset sales. The company received just one wholly inadequate $30.5 million bid for Society 6 Group. Up until that point, Leaf Group probably thought that Society 6 was worth somewhere between 150 and 200 million. Society 6 was generating approximately 100 million in sales at the time, and it's not unreasonable to expect a buyer to pay twice that annual sales number for an e-commerce business that's growing and profitable. Society 6, however, was neither growing nor profitable. The reason for the low bid was due to the fact that the VC story had fallen apart. You can't tell a potential investor that things are going to be great in the future when they're clearly heading in the wrong direction. Leaf Group investors were left holding an unprofitable hot potato, and they weren't happy about it. The investors felt that the CEO and the management team hadn't done a good job of running the company for several years, and that they hadn't done a good job of trying to find a buyer for the company either. The entire process spilled out into the public. The investors started issuing press releases and open letters demanding that the board of directors fire the CEO. Leaf Group's CEO and management team then responded with an open letter of their own. Leaf Group wanted someone to pay a price for Society 6 based on traditional VC storytelling. Quote, Society 6 is going to be hugely profitable one day, end quote. And everyone else wanted to pay a realistic price based on Society 6's lack of profits. When no one stepped in to buy or invest in Leaf Group, I remember thinking that this was it. It was the beginning of the end for the VC era in the print-on-demand industry. Then something unprecedented happened. It was March 2020, and the entire world was shut down. I think we all know the rest there. Let's go to part 2. When the pandemic started, how long is this? It's kind of long. All right, let's just go through it. We're committed, right? We're committed at this point. When the pandemic started, I was prepared for Fine Art America to experience a dramatic decline in sales. After all, who needs to buy artwork with such uncertainty in the world and millions of people out of work? Almost immediately, however, sales started climbing. People were staying home and avoiding large crowds, and they started making more of their purchases online. This greatly benefited e-commerce companies like Fine Art America. In March 2020, the United States government sent out stimulus checks to millions of people in order to try and prop up the U.S. economy. Over the next 12 months, the government sent out more than $400 billion in checks. Apparently, many of those check recipients wanted to purchase artwork for their homes because Fine Art America's sales grew rapidly. Sales grew rapidly for all of our competitors as well. Leaf Group had been on the ropes at the end of 2019. They lost $27 million that year and were on pace to run out of money by the end of 2020. All of a sudden, the pandemic reversed their fortunes. Their sales shot up 87% in 2020. What? And the annual loss for Leaf Group dropped from $27 million in 2019 to $9 million in 2020. So they still found a way to lose money. It's interesting to note that they were still losing millions of dollars per year. I know that's what he read my mind. It's like, how did they manage to still lose money? But anyways, I won't judge. But that was no longer important. The VC story was alive again. Sales were growing. Leaf Group capitalized on that storytelling by raising $32 million from investors in December 2020. They sold 8 million shares of the company at roughly $4 per share. That's pretty incredible when you think about it. In early 2020, 48 companies had passed on investing in Leaf Group, and just 9 months later, Leaf Group was able to raise $32 million, all on the strength of storytelling. They were the exact same business at the end of 2020 that they were at the beginning of the year, but the pandemic had given them a gift of growing sales. Flush with almost $32 million in new cash plus an additional $7.1 million in PPP loans, Leaf Group investors set to finish out what they had started earlier that year. It was a good time to tell a good story of an unprofitable business and then toss the hot potato. In June 2021, a company called Graham Holdings listened to the story, liked what they heard, and purchased Leaf Group for $232 million. I thought I just read 323, honestly. On Wikipedia, it says 323, just to be... yeah, it looks like 323. So it looks like he might have had an error, unless that I didn't read into this at all. I just had Googled it on my side monitor there, but I see multiple sources saying it was 323. Leaf Group convinced Graham Holdings to pay $323 million for a business that prior to the pandemic had been on a multi-year decline and was losing millions of dollars per year. Almost immediately, Graham Holdings realized their mistake. As the pandemic faded, Leaf Group's sales started to decline again, and the business racked up a massive annual loss for their new owner. In the Graham Holdings annual report, which was published at the end of 2022, their CEO had this to say about the purchase of Leaf Group. Quote, "The last of our businesses I'll provide an update on is Leaf Group. While most of what I have reported thus far is good news, unfortunately, the next chapter is not. Leaf Group, our collection of media and commerce brands acquired in 2021, has struggled. Those struggles accelerated as 2022 progressed. As a result, we took a goodwill and other assets impairment charge of $129 million in Q4 of 2022. Leaf has underperformed our expectations and we overpaid. I screwed this one up. To make matters worse, we're not out of the woods yet. Trends around advertising were not favorable as we exited 2022, and Society 6 continued to see depressed demands and inflationary pressures. As a result, Leaf Group incurred substantial losses in 2022. We expect to continue into 2023. All right, keep in mind, we just pulled up Graham Holdings stock a second ago. All right, and interest rates are very high, inflation's very high, and the stock market, well, their stock is at all-time highs. So I'm just saying for perspective, right? Like, could they have done themselves a favor by not buying? This is just me talking, by the way. I'm not reading anymore. By not buying Leaf Group? Yeah, probably. But also, I mean, there's pressure from a lot of different angles. This is just my understanding that they need to, like, put their capital to work. When you're a publicly traded company and you get these already inflated valuations almost by default, you got to put that capital to work. You got to invest in the future. You got to tell a good story. The same way that Leaf Group told them a story, Graham Holdings has to tell a story so that they get in, you know, because essentially when they buy the stock, they're not buying it for what it's worth today. They're buying it for what it will be worth in the future. So you start buying companies like Leaf Group. Come on now. A lot of companies made what now look like poor investments at the end of 2021 and 2022, right? When the bubble was kind of popping. But again, also at the same time, you can't really let these bubbles pop. It would be the end of the financialized world and really the end of the world if they let these bubbles pop. That's just my personal opinion. And it is an inevitability. They will one day, but I don't think it's anytime soon. They'll do whatever they can to keep propping these bubbles up. All right, that was me talking. Back to the article. Per their own calculation, Graham Holdings had overpaid for Leaf Group by $129 million, and the situation was only getting worse. If you're Graham Holdings, what do you do with a money-losing business that has declining sales? You can't toss that potato, so you have to figure out how to make it profitable by lowering your costs. What's the easiest way to lower costs for a print-on-demand business? Pay the artists less. In 2023, Society 6 did just that. For the first time in history, by the way, they were not alone, as we know. For the first time in history of their business, they introduced monthly membership fees for their artists and then capped artist royalties at 10% for their entry-level membership plan. The end of profitless VC era had arrived, and it now was starting to affect the artists. Now let's go to part 3. Part 3, cost-cutting and reduced artist royalties. I launched Fine Art America back in 2006 after many months of nonstop programming. I was working as an engineer during the day and then building FAA Fine Art America on nights and weekends. You can read more about the history of the business here. At the time, FAA was one of the first crowdsourced art sites in the world. According to Wikipedia, the term crowdsourcing was coined just the year before in 2005. There were websites that sold artwork before we launched in 2006, but none of them were fully automated platforms which allowed independent artists to upload images and sell products on their own. We were the only one until we weren't. Within a few months of launching, other websites appeared on the scene offering features that were strikingly similar to FAA, like imagekind.com, redbubble.com, artistrising.com, and others. All of these companies were backed by millions of dollars of venture capital, staffed by dozens of employees, managed by experienced management teams, and advised by well-connected boards of directors. I was a one-man operation with absolutely no money and no connections in the art world or internet world. I had built Fine Art America completely from scratch and didn't even know a single programmer with any web experience. In order to level the playing field, I could have tried to raise money from outside investors, but I had no interest in doing that. The minute that you accept money from investors, you're no longer the boss of your company, and you're often on an inevitable path to selling or losing control of your business. Your investors eventually want their millions back with a 10x return, he put in quotes, and oftentimes the only way to do that is to sell the business or take it public with an IPO. I had no interest in doing either. Therefore, in order to remain competitive and grow the business, I decided to focus all my efforts on developing new features as quickly as possible. I focused on giving artists everything they would need in order to be successful online, and I knew that if I could do that, word of mouth would be all I needed to grow the business in the early days. The near instantaneous arrival of well-funded competitors forced me to relentlessly grow the business through hard work, programming, automation, and product innovation. I've been at it for 18 years now, and I'm more convinced than ever that the decision to focus on profitability and avoid raising capital was critically important to the long-term success of Fine Art America. Now, this is just me interjecting real quick. It all depends, I think, truly on what you're after. What are your goals? You know what I mean? Because like he said earlier, you can really defer profitability, take a company public, and a lot of it depends on macro things that you don't control. Like, oh, interest rates are zero now, so all these companies get bid up to insane market caps or valuations. Whereas right now, oh, interest rates are high, and kind of the opposite happens. But it's what's your goal? You know what I mean? Do you want to be a billionaire or a multimillionaire? Because if you focus on profitability, you could probably hit 8 figures, but are you going to hit 9? It's a lot rarer, right? Unless you're contracting with the government. Side joke there. Let me know if you got it. Throughout the entire industry or history of our business, we've been competing against dozens of VC companies that lose millions of dollars every year. In 2023, 2 of those companies decided that it was finally important to focus on profits, and they both zeroed in on the same target in order to reduce their costs: artist royalties. On November 1st, 2023, Society6 capped artist royalties at 10% for free accounts and introduced tiered monthly fees for other artist accounts. In May 2023, Redbubble introduced artist fees for the first time in history of their business, and the way they structured their fees was unbelievably bold. I actually had to reread their announcement several times in order to make sure I was reading it correctly. If you guys remember when that happened, I also read it on my YouTube channel. Prior to May 2023, artists on Redbubble could set their own royalties just like you can on Fine Art America. For example, if you set your royalty to 25% on Redbubble and sold a product for $120, you would earn $30. Starting in May 2023, Redbubble decided to start deducting arbitrary fees from those royalties. Take a look at this chart below from Redbubble's announcement about their new fee structure. Those are a partial view of the full table that can be found there. The artist royalty is on the left, and the fee that Redbubble is going to deduct from the royalty is on the right. Let's say that you sold some items on Redbubble and earned $30 in a certain month. For the past 2 decades, Redbubble would have sent you a royalty payment of $30 for that month. Now take a look at the highlighted row in the table above. With the new fees in place, Redbubble will now subtract a fee of $20.70 and send you a reduced royalty payment of $9.30. In that scenario, they cut your royalty by more than 65%. Insane. Even now, as I'm writing this article, I have to double check myself to make sure I'm not misreading or misinterpreting something. That entire table of fees is unbelievable. Then I read their announcement about the fees. Quote, "To move into the next stage of our growth, we're introducing an account tier structure and a fee for certain accounts. That fee is based on your monthly earnings and only applies if you make a sale. We believe this will benefit everyone who participates in our marketplace: artists, customers, third-party fulfillers, and licensing partners." End quote. I've been running Fine Art America for over 18 years now. I've grown it to use all kinds of spin that gets sent out by VC companies. This Redbubble announcement takes the cake. They cut their artist royalties by 50% or more in many cases, and then told the artists it'll be good for them. Yeah, that doublespeak is becoming more and more popular these days, or prevalent, I would say, these days. If you have eyes to see it, it's all around us all the time. Here's what really happened in 2023. Redbubble was unprofitable. In 2022, they lost $22.3 million. In fact, they lost millions of dollars every single year for the previous 8 years, except for 2021, when they got a big boost from sales from the pandemic. Here's their 2022 annual report. Note, Redbubble is an Australian company, and when you read their financial documents, all dollar amounts are in Australian dollars. In 2022, their sales were declining and they were unprofitable. I can't fault them for trying to figure out how to become more profitable. I just can't believe how they went about doing it. They're a company that depends on a community of artists to feed their business, and they cut off their artists at the knees. They also did it in a way that's almost guaranteed to anger their artists month after month going forward forever. Let's say you're a Redbubble artist and you've set your royalty to be 25%. You then sell a product for $120 and watch $30 get deposited into your Redbubble account. That $30 sits there in your account all month long, and then right before Redbubble is about to transfer the money to your PayPal account, they subtract $20.70 and send you $9.30 instead. They might as well just punch you in the face while they're at it. You thought you were going to earn 25% on your sales, but Redbubble just forced you to accept 7.75% instead. Here's their 2023 annual report, which just got published a few months after they introduced their new fee structure in May 2023. Take a look at page 30 in the annual report and read this paragraph. Quote, in May, the group rolled out artist account tiers on Redbubble Marketplace and an associated fee for some accounts. This initiative contributed $1.7 million to fiscal year 23 gross profit in the 2 months since it was implemented. In just 2 months, May and June 2023, Redbubble clawed back $1.7 million in royalties from their artists. At that pace, they would claw back at least $10 million over the next 12 months. In reality, they ended up clawing back even more because they raised their fees a second time. While they were busy taking back money from their artists, they hired 84 new employees and ended their accounting year with a head count of 245 employees. Wow, I would have never guessed. Fine Art America has 8 employees. That's more how I would run a business, by the way. Like, I would be like, all right, what is everybody doing? Like, I want to know exactly what you do. You know, I don't know. I live near Washington, D.C., where it's like the infinite money printer is what I call it. And companies are incentivized to keep people on the payroll, even if they don't do anything, because the people at the top get the government to pay their salary and they skim, you know, whatever the markup is for just being the hiring manager of that employee that doesn't have to actually work. It's crazy. Anyways, rant over. Back to this. Fine Art America, 8 employees. So what are the 245 people doing over at Redbubble? Running a print-on-demand business like Fine Art America is simple. When an order gets placed on our website, our code automatically routes the order to a third-party manufacturer. The manufacturer then produces the order and ships it directly to the buyer. Fine Art America gets paid by the buyer at the time of purchase, and then approximately 30 days later, we send payments to our third-party manufacturers and our artists for their portions of the orders. It's that simple. We're a technology company. Money comes in, and then 30 days later, some of that money goes out. What's left is our profit. I'm able to manage all the finances for Fine Art America using the same sort of tools that you probably use to manage your personal finances at home. We don't have any inventory to maintain. We don't have any debt. We don't have any investors. Our only overhead is the rent for our office, salaries for our small staff, and the monthly fees we pay out for our various web servers. Our entire business is fully automated, and as a result, our lean, dedicated staff is able to process thousands of orders per day for millions of artists all over the world. Redbubble, in theory, is set up similarly in that they outsource all their manufacturing to third-party manufacturers. Did you know that? So what the heck are they doing? I'm asking the same thing, man. We are on the same wavelength right now, me and the Fine Art America CEO. That's a mind-boggling number. There has to be so much wasted money in a company like that. Take a look at this annual report from Redbubble. Click on that link, take a quick look. The document is very thorough and well designed. If I had to take a guess, it must have cost them 6 figures to create a document like that when you factor in all the time spent by Redbubble's accountants, attorneys, HR, staff, board of directors, editors, graphic designers. Are they going to make me click it? Here we go. It's loading up. It's loading a big PDF. By the way, I'm going to link to this in the description in case you guys want to follow along. Damn, this is a big PDF. Okay, yeah, this is a nicely put together document. I get what he's saying now. Very large file. Okay, back here. All of that time was spent purely to keep their investors happy, and that's the important part here. The purpose of a public company like Redbubble is to increase the value of the business for their investors. Again, that's kind of the point, you know. And I'm not like trying to stand by that. It's a weird time to be alive, I guess is a nice way to put it. When you're publicly traded, it's like everything must change so much. I'm not like an expert, but I've spent a lot of time, last like almost 5 years straight, honestly, trying to understand it. If you're a Redbubble artist, you're not an investor in Redbubble. You're a supplier. From a financial point of view, your monthly royalty is actually a cost that subtracts from their revenue and makes it harder for them to turn a profit each month. When an unprofitable company wants to become profitable, they have to cut costs. That's exactly what happened. Redbubble and Society6 took an axe to one of their largest costs, their artist royalties. All right, part 4, let's go. Part 4 is called Squeezing Artists and the VC Double Whammy. In your daily life, many of the companies you interact with are owned by investors like Apple, Google, Uber, General Motors, Whole Foods. And by the way, when they say investors, you know, you can go and actually look at who's holding like the largest percentages of those stocks, and it's actually a lot of the same players. Vanguard, BlackRock, State Street are usually the top 3. Kind of interesting, the consolidation of power when you think about how it all works, right? You interact with these companies as a buyer. You buy iPhones from Apple, you buy cars from General Motors, you buy groceries from Whole Foods. The goal of these companies is to, quote, maximize shareholder value, end quote, which over time generally means that these companies need to maximize profits for their investors. One way for companies to maximize profits is to squeeze price concessions out of their suppliers. For example, Apple pressures their electronic supplier to lower the cost of electronic components that go into iPhones and iPads. General Motors squeezes their suppliers for lower costs on automotive components. Whole Foods pressures their farmers for lower costs on fruits and veggies. As a buyer, you're happy when these corporations squeeze their suppliers because the squeezing results in lower prices for you at the cash register. You get to buy cheaper iPhones, cheaper cars, and cheaper groceries. However, in the print-on-demand industry, you're not the buyer, you're the supplier. You're the one getting squeezed. And that right there is the big issue with all the VC print-on-demand companies that are now trying to become profitable. Eventually, in order to maximize profits, artists are going to get squeezed. It's just too tempting and too easy. Let's pretend that you're the owner of a print-on-demand company and that you're currently paying your artist 25% royalty on $100 on a $100 sale. That means you would pay $25 to the artist. Suddenly, one of your competitors drops their royalties to 10%, and the artist seems to be okay with that. There's no mass exodus of artists. There are very few online protests. As the owner of the business that's still paying 25% to your artists, how would you react to one of your competitors dropping their royalties to 10%? It's very tempting to follow suit. In an instant, you, the business owner, can drop your own royalties from 25% down to 10%, and just like that, you put an additional 15% of each sale into your own pocket. In May 2023, Redbubble cut their artist royalties for the first time in history of their business, and just 6 months later, Society6 followed suit with royalty cuts of their own and new monthly fees as well. As it turns out, cutting royalties was just the first part of a VC double whammy, and he's being generous by leaving out Etsy, don't you think? Was I not supposed to say that? VC companies have deep pockets. You know, Etsy's been squeezing their sellers for a while now, but implementing even more fees now. VC companies have deep pockets, and they use those deep pockets to spend money on Google ads, TV commercials, brand ambassadors, employees, YouTube videos, and more. They can also undercut their competitors by selling their products for a loss. They do that by either setting their retail prices very low or offering extreme discounts on a regular basis. Do you remember the early days of Uber and Lyft? You could take an Uber to the airport for $20, and that same ride would cost you $50 in a traditional taxi. Did Uber discover some secret to driving people around more cost effectively? No, they just had hundreds of millions of dollars in venture capital at their disposal, and they used that money to undercut their competitors. They took massive losses on their daily rides, and the investment dollars sustained them through the losses. Their goal was to get as many riders as possible to start using the app instead of calling for a taxi. If they could get riders hooked on the app, then they could crush their competitors and eventually raise Uber prices back to normal levels sometime in the future. I know that Bill Gates is no stranger to this. I forget, there's like a name for it, but he literally has like his hands in so many different industries, and he like goes for the jugular using this exact approach pretty much in all of them, you know what I mean? As often as possible to essentially crush his competitors. That's exactly what happened. Here's a really interesting article about how VC companies like Uber use predatory prices to undercut competitors and attract new customers. In addition to undercutting on price, VC companies also spend wildly on advertising and other initiatives to grow their business. Let's take a look at advertising. Let's say the Fine Art America spends $20 on Facebook ads in order to sell a $200 frame print for one of our artists. Let's further assume that our profit margin is 25%. That means for a $200 order, Fine Art America would make $50 in gross profit. After subtracting the $20 advertising cost that we paid to Facebook in order to generate the order, the net profit to Fine Art America would be $30. That's not too bad, and that's actually how we run our business. We're an independent, profitable business, and we make sure that our advertising is profitable as well. That means we never spend more money on our ads than the profits we expect to generate from those ads. For all these years, however, we've been up against VC companies that will gladly spend $200 on ads to generate a $160 sale. Again, if you assume a 25% profit margin, that means the VC company is spending $200 in order to generate a $40 gross profit. $40 in gross profit minus $200 in advertising costs results in a net loss of $160. Math. VC companies were fine accepting losses like that as long as they could grow their sales and tell the story that we'll figure out how to be profitable someday in the future. If Fine Art America only wants to spend $20 on a particular Facebook ad and company XYZ is willing to spend $200 for that same ad, guess which Facebook is going to run? Unprofitable VC spending ends up raising the cost of advertising for everybody. If Fine Art America wants our ads to show up on Facebook, then we have to spend more money in order to compete with company XYZ. Now that all the VC companies are being forced to focus on profitability, their free spending days are coming to a close. You can see it in their recent financial reports and press releases. You'll see statements above, or statements about, quote, renewed focus on profitability, end quote, and, quote, making sure our online advertising is more profitable in the first purchase, or on first purchase, end quote. It's a little bit of a bait and switch. For almost 2 decades, VC companies attracted artists to their websites with a set your own royalty business model and then generated sales for those artists with all sorts of unsustainable business practices. They spent wildly on unprofitable ads. They sold products for below their manufacturing costs. They offered 50% discounts on their homepages every day of the year. The only reason that your Uber ride used to cost you $20 was because Uber was willing to lose money on it. Now that Uber wants to be profitable, that same ride costs $50 again. In 2023 and 2024, artists got hit with a double whammy as various print-on-demand companies started chasing profits. First, the companies cut back on their unprofitable and unsustainable business practices. They stopped spending wildly on online ads, they cut back on their massive daily discounts, they raised their prices, etc. All of those changes resulted in a drop in sales for the artists. Then, with the artist sales in decline, the VC companies hit them with reduced royalties and additional monthly fees. The double whammy was complete, and artists were back riding around in a $50 Uber. Continue to part 5. What can artists do? If you're an artist who spent years uploading images to a VC print-on-demand website, you're now watching your sales decline and your royalties get cut. What are you supposed to do? The obvious answer is just close your account and start selling elsewhere, but that's easier said than done. Let's say that you were earning $500 per month selling through a certain print-on-demand website, and now that they've cut your royalty, you'll be earning $300 per month going forward. Are you going to close your account over that? Probably not. $300 is enough to make a monthly car payment. It's a great night out to dinner with a bunch of friends. If you save $300 per month for several months, you've saved enough for a nice vacation. You may be infuriated that your print-on-demand partner cut your royalty, and you may post some angry messages about it in various online discussion forums, but you probably won't leave the site. Most artists won't be willing to leave until they're able to transition their monthly income to another website with a better royalty structure. So find another print-on-demand business with a better royalty structure. I know a good one, and he links to Fine Art America. You guessed it. Then change all your social media links to point to your new profile on that page. They will immediately encourage your social media followers to buy from your new POD partner. That's also one of the biggest, strongest signals that you can give to Google and other search engines about where you want your sales to go. Because Google does look at where links point and then kind of values the website that it's pointing to. If all your social media sites point to your profile page on your new print-on-demand site, guess which site is most likely to show up first on Google when someone searches for your name art or your name canvas prints? Over time, your sales will transition to your new site, and if you get to the point where you're making $500 per month on your new site and only $50 per month on your old site, you might be more willing to leave the old site at that point. You can also encourage your artist friends to leave or make changes with you. You have to decide which websites you can want to be associated with and which business model you want to prevail in the industry. Do you want to continue uploading your artwork into a VC ecosystem where you'll face endless pressure from investors to cut your royalties, or do you want to associate yourself with an independent business and set your own royalty? For some historical perspective, take a look at the stock photo industry. Years ago, photographers used to be able to license their images for hundreds of dollars per license. In 2004, Shutterstock started selling image licenses for just a few dollars each. By the way, let's do this. Shutterstock stock. We got to do it, right? We got to look it up. What do you guys think? All-time high? No, not all-time high. Oh, damn. Might bounce soon, though. Coming up on support there. Shutterstock stock. Potential buy. I'm not saying anything, by the way. Not financial advice. That is a nice little, yeah. Keep that one to myself. If you know how to read charts, I don't know. There might be something there. I'm going to jump on over to TradingView after I finish recording this. Over time, the Shutterstock business model took over and changed the entire industry. Eventually, more and more photographers just accepted lower payments as their new reality. Now, all the major players in the stock photo industry sell some image licenses for a few dollars or less. Unfortunately, there's no going back. It's a race to the bottom. Once an entire industry transitions to low payments are here to stay. Can I just chime in for like 2 seconds and say, well, also you could maybe potentially call it price discovery, like barriers of entry for people around the world, not just United States, but like internationally. And this isn't me trying to correct like the CEO of Fine Art America. I mean, I'm sure he's a really sharp guy and extremely bright, and he knows exactly what he's talking about. But I'm just saying, like, people from around the world now can participate in e-commerce because these barriers are getting knocked down, which if there is a price discovery mechanism, we might end up realizing that like Redbubble can, you know, pay artists like $1 or $2 per shirt sold, right? Like TeePublic kind of does, which of course both owned by the same company, instead of paying like $6, right? And then it just becomes the new norm. Yeah, it sucks as an artist. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I'm just saying, you know, maybe this was just an inevitability. I don't know. It really is just about like how little can we pay the artists to where they keep showing up and our business can kind of maintain like the status quo, right? I don't know. That's my take. All right. The finale, the last part, the future of e-commerce. And I apologize if you guys didn't want to hear me kind of talk about it as I you know, interjected my opinions as we went. Sorry about that if you didn't want to hear it, but it is my YouTube channel. So, all right. Investor-backed startup companies are not the future of print on demand. They never were. The future belongs to lean, profitable, highly automated companies like Fine Art America. Our small, dedicated staff allows us to innovate exponentially faster than our competitors. And due to the outsourcing of manufacturing, we have an infinite capacity to scale our business with absolutely no need for investor capital, or additional employees. Worth noting that like the people they outsource to, they might take investor money, but not that, I guess he's still making his point. But Fine Art America could sign up 500,000 new artists tomorrow, and we wouldn't have to change anything about how we run our business. We don't need hundreds of employees, a board of directors, or fancy annual reports to keep all those artists happy. We just need great scalable technology and a lean, dedicated staff. What is a VC company without millions of dollars to spend on unsustainable business practices? It's just a regular, oftentimes bloated company that now has to play by the same rules as everybody else. The print-on-demand industry is undergoing dramatic changes. The free spending days of venture capital have come to an end, and as VC companies attempt to reverse decades of losses and become profitable, artist royalties are in the crosshairs. As an artist, you can either sit back and take it, or you can make a change. If you're an artist who's frustrated with the state of the industry and the direction that you're headed with your current print-on-demand partner, you should find a new partner. Fine Art America is the only independent tech company in the entire print-on-demand industry. We've always been the only one. So they're the only independent tech company in the entire print-on-demand industry. Interesting. Our business model is the same today as it was back in 2006. We set a base price for all the products we sell, and then our artists can mark up those base prices however they see fit. When a buyer places an order for one of our artist products, we've got 16 manufacturing centers located all over the world that are ready to manufacture and ship those products. We're an independent company that was built for independent artists. After almost 2 decades in business, we now power the online sales for millions of artists and brands from all over the world. A few years ago, I wanted to make a video to promote our artists and capture the independent spirit of Fine Art America. I wrote down a concept for the video, found some music I liked, and then pitched it to one of my coworkers. 4 hours later, he created this video. So if you guys want to watch that, that's going to be on the last part of this blog post. The next day, I uploaded the video to the homepage of Fine Art America, and then he launched an advertising campaign on YouTube and Instagram to promote the video to millions of viewers. Over the years, we've created dozens of videos at Fine Art America, but I often come back and rewatch that one in particular. What you see in the video perfectly captures the spirit of our artists, but I rewatch it to remember the feeling that I had when it sprang into life just a few hours based on the work of a few people. Nearly 2 decades after I launched Fine Art America from my apartment, we're still running it like a scrappy little startup. Fine Art America is living proof that a small, bootstrapped company with relentless focus on product development, automation, and profitability can emerge as an industry leader with true staying power. You should join us. Join millions of incredible artists from all over the world in our vibrant online community, set your own royalties, and ensure that the print-on-demand industry remains lean, independent, and scrappy. That is the end. All right, guys. Hope you found that helpful. Thank God the recording is still going. If I was just reading to myself, man, that would have been rough because, yeah. Okay, anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. It is linked in the description. Let me know your thoughts. If you made it till the end, just comment below. Say, I made it to the end. Let me know if you're going to sell on Fine Art America. This was not like sponsored or anything like that. I just thought it was an interesting blog post. And I didn't really know what direction it was going to head. I wanted to read it along with you guys. So I hope you found that helpful. Please like and subscribe if you're not already. And I'll see you guys soon with another new video.